Twitchie The Talent Moocher. That's the name of tonight's show, and it's a veritable bad joke like many other bad jokes that I tell on this show. The name is a parody of the Blues Brothers soundtrack song and that classic blues song from long time ago, Minnie The Moocher. The ugly truth of the matter is that Twitch's success is largely riding off the coattails of other successful platforms like YouTube. Streaming developed out of video uploads. Before YouTube, you had Real Player, and then you had, MPEGs and stuff. And the current streaming bubble, as I refer to it, enjoys its popularity due to low barriers to entry and uploads its shortcomings on things like monetization for folks who want to advance past recreational content creation. So I mention over and over again, and I have right here a reprise of cable versus satellite TV. Satellite TV, if you look at it from a technical perspective, is a downgrade from cable. It actually reintroduces some of the problems related to that we dealt with rabbit ears TV, such as weather outages. But satellite was a thing because of failures in the cable industry. Cable was too expensive, bad service, things like that. And so there was a time when satellite was price competitive versus cable TV. So satellite, and now of course nowadays you hear about, satellite companies, they can't offer internet service that's anything good. So they're stuck with pay TV, which is in decline, and now you're hearing about the satellite companies filing for bankruptcy. But once upon a time, basically what happened was the satellite industry became what it is because of cable's failures. And now it is getting destroyed as cable's failures stop mattering as much. The same thing applies to live streaming. Live streaming is a thing, and it's as big as it is today because it's a bubble. There's some inherent problems with uploads. YouTube is a monopoly, a near monopoly when it comes to uploading. And so YouTube's problems have a lot to do with why streaming has become as popular as it is. The minute YouTube decides to solve some of these long-standing problems with uploads, streaming's in trouble. I think many of these big streamers out there, if the monetization problem was solved with uploads, I think a lot of them would very seriously consider paring back their streaming and do more videos. One of probably the biggest problems with YouTube right now from a monetization perspective is the lack of a way to direct support a creator through YouTube and through the UI, a tip button. I keep saying this is one of those things that is so close. If YouTube ever put two and two together, figured this out, and fixed their UI, Twitch would be in a lot of trouble. So here's the thing when it comes to tipping on uploads. If there was a tipping function and it was part of the UI and the user base was trained to use it the way they do with streaming, then you would eliminate one of the major advantages that streaming has over uploads. And I think you'd see more people start making videos again. But as it stands right now, there's only ad revenue. Now here's why this is so frustrating for me. YouTube has, through supers, super chat, and super stickers, YouTube has a way to direct support a creator with the equivalent of a dono. But it only applies through the YouTube UI, not through something like Streamlabs or Stream Elements. So, super chat, super stickers. So, there's already something internal to YouTube that lets people dono, essentially, to YouTubers. But it's on the live streaming side of things, not on uploads. Now, here's the thing with the upload tip button that I keep bringing it up over and over again. I'll keep bringing it up until YouTube finally figures this out, uses a little bit of their gray matter, and makes it a thing. There have been some of YouTube's attempted competitors have had direct tip buttons on uploads. If YouTube would ever either stop going so wild with live streaming or use live streaming as the rough draft for stuff that gets rolled out to the rest of YouTube, and roll out a dono system, a tipping system to uploads. If YouTube ever did that, it would eliminate one of the biggest problems that uploads have versus streaming with monetization. Somebody wants to be a full-time content creator, and they'll have access to something besides ad revenue. So ad revenue is kind of blah anyways, dependent upon CPMs, and it's split between all kinds of people. But if people could actually dono directly to content creators they liked, instead of having to go through hoops like a Patreon or go over to an unrelated Stream Elements page, which actually has something in the TOS on Stream Elements saying you really shouldn't use this to collect donos from stuff that's not related to streaming. The minute Stream Elements lightens up with that stuff, takes that out of the TOS, I would have no problem putting my Stream Elements link on everything over on YouTube. I'll go around and add that into the descriptions of everything if YouTube won't roll out a tipping button. Help solve that problem. So, that's the thing. I'm waiting for YouTube to fix that. But whenever they do, streaming's in trouble. And that's why I keep mentioning that this reprisal of cable versus satellite. Because a lot of what makes streaming so popular is the shortcomings of uploads. Now, let's talk about this grind thing that we keep mentioning. It was something we looked at with those Reddit threads earlier. The long con, so to speak, of becoming a big streamer is that many big streamers are not homegrown talent on something like Twitch. Many of them did something else or do something else. Some of this is to get around the shortcomings of live streaming itself. So, one thing we can talk about is the idea of evergreen content. Live streaming is perishable. It's time sensitive. And by and large, nobody's going to care about your live stream after it's no longer live. On Twitch, what YouTube videos are has a somewhat derogatory term, VOD. I missed something in your stream. Watch the VOD. So it's the sort of terminology that relegates videos to a second-rate form of content on YouTube. Or on Twitch, excuse me. Unlike on YouTube, where they're called videos, and they're not kind of put to this tier underneath streaming. That's one of the big things about all of this. So, the shortcomings of live streaming itself, a lot of the shortcomings of live streaming are specifically related to it being live in the first place. Its greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. Yeah, you're involved in a live event. You say, oh, I was there. That was fun, man. You know, you get involved in a community. People can say stuff in the chat, things along those lines. You can say all kinds of stuff and you can have a good time. But when you look at stuff after the fact, when stuff isn't happening right then, right now, you don't really remember every single little detail. Let's say, suppose you and I go out to like a theme park or something and we ride rides all day, roller coasters, blah, 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 blah. So how much of every single mundane detail of that day are you going to remember? You're probably going to remember more. You're more likely to remember the highlights, what counts, what was the most fun. And so that's one of the problems that I have with Twitch and this UI that is constantly telling people, check out this stream from blah, blah, go whenever you're offline. Nobody's going to do that. Highlights need to be the first thing people see, because that's ultimately that's going to be what they're interested in, unless they're completionists that have to see every second of everything. I mean, even things like, for example, sports games, recording football games and stuff. We talked about football earlier with we have the equivalent of football call-offs at the 9 to 5 without the football. But I actually was skeptical when I first saw that the NFL had a YouTube channel and they're uploading highlights of football games. I was like, what the heck is this, man? Let me watch the whole thing. I'll gladly sit there and watch the football game over and over again. But then I thought later on, I was like, wait a minute. It wouldn't be anything special because I'd have friends who already knew the score. I'd be tempted to fast forward if the game was getting too dull, or skip around or something like that, try and find something more interesting. It's probably better for someone to put a 15-minute YouTube video up of all the key plays of the game. I watched that and I pretty much know what happened in the game in 15 minutes. Not that, the referees stopped the game for 2 minutes to argue over whether a pass was incomplete or something like that. So it's definitely something that we have to think about with regards to all of this. So yeah, shortcomings of live streaming itself. The thing you have to remember is that people remember more along the lines of a YouTube video for things that are after the fact. They're not going to be as interested in sitting there for 8 hours watching a VOD. They're going to want to know, okay, what were the big things? Because anybody knows that unless you're the greatest showman in the world, you're not going to have good showmanship for a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-hour stream. There's going to be dull parts. There's going to be, and people joke about stalling. No, it's a lack of showmanship, and it's an inherent weakness of the live streaming format. You can't edit that out. So if your hard drive or whatever is slow on your computer because you're, for some reason, streaming with a computer with your games on a mechanical drive that's slow, and you're sitting through long load times as opposed to getting into the game and stuff like that, like people that play on an SSD or something. That's part of the issue here. So, I mentioned at the end that we should do debate format versus Devin Nash's recent video on Twitch grinding and Harris Heller's video on this debate that's going on over on Reddit. But I think what I'm going to do, actually, is I'm going to skip both of these, because as much as I could react to both of these rival commentators, so to speak, content, I want to do something myself. I want to actually fire up Excel in the middle of the night because I'm a nerd. We'll fire up some music, we'll fire up some Excel, and we'll take a look at this Twitchie The Talent Moocher thing. There's two things I want to put in this spreadsheet. I want to have a list of platforms as to whether content is perishable or evergreen, and I also want to have a gigantic list of every streamer that I can think of and their origin story. Are they actually this mythical homegrown talent on Twitch? Or did they become what they are because of something else? I don't think there's much, if any, people out there that are doing what all these people think they can do on Twitch. The people involved in this argument on Reddit think that you can grind your way to actually being a big streamer on Twitch. And yet when I look at creator after creator after creator, big and small, that seems to be getting somewhere on Twitch, they either did something else or they're doing something else. And I think the shortcomings of live streaming itself, what it takes to get around this, means you should be doing something else by virtue of the limitations of the live format itself. That's the thing. There's too many people that think that you can go from zero to hero on Twitch. But unlike the fight on Reddit over whether Twitch grinding is anything good, spoiler alert, it's not. Unlike the big fight on Reddit, many of Twitch's heroes did something else. They didn't grind their way all the way up. So we'll fire up Excel when we come back. And we will make the Twitchie The Talent Moocher Excel lists. Because I'm a nerd, I'm a multimedia nerd, do a little bit of analytics too, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I do. This is Multimedia J Radio style. Don't touch that dial. Let's play some more music from Slink on the YouTube audio library. We'll be right back.
257. Multimedia J Radio style.